What if everything you've been told about success is wrong? Not slightly wrong, not off by a little, completely, fundamentally, dangerously wrong. Because right now, millions of people are grinding themselves into dust, chasing a version of success that was never designed for them in the first place. And the scariest part, they think they're doing everything right. Let me ask you something before we go any further. When was the last time you took a full day off without feeling guilty about it? When was the last time you sat down and did absolutely nothing productive and didn't immediately reach for your phone to scroll through someone else's highlight reel of hustle? When was the last time you cancelled plans with yourself, not because something came up, but because you simply decided you deserved a break without a reason? If you can't remember, and I mean genuinely can't remember, then this video might be the most important thing you watch this year. Not because I'm going to sell you a course, not because I have a magic morning routine to fix your life, but because the story being sold to you right now is costing you far more than you realize. And the bill is coming due whether you're paying attention or not. Here's the pitch you've heard 1,000 times. Wake up at 5 a.m., hit the gym, journal, meditate, read 50 pages, answer emails before anyone else is even awake, side hustle until midnight, sacrifice your weekends, skip the vacation, skip the wedding, skip the birthday dinner, because one day, one glorious day, all of that suffering will convert into wealth, freedom, and the kind of happiness that makes it all worth it. That's the hustle culture gospel. And it sounds incredible until you start doing the math, until you start actually looking at the people preaching the hardest and noticing that most of them got wealthy selling the idea of hustle, not by actually hustling in the traditional sense. The motivational content is the product. You are the consumer. Your anxiety is the engine. The math, by the way, is absolutely brutal. Think about this. The average full-time employee in the United States already works about 47 hours a week. That's not 40. That's 47. Now add the side hustle. Add the online course you're building at 11 p.m. Add the social media content you're posting to build your personal brand. Add the networking events you drag yourself to after work. You're not working more. You're entering a different category of human experience entirely. One that researchers have a very specific word for. They call it chronic overwork. And chronic overwork, as it turns out, doesn't make you rich. It makes you sick. But nobody puts that on a motivational poster, do they? Nobody's printing grind until you need beta blockers on a gym bag. Let's talk about the first example where this hustle mythology collapses completely. And it comes from the world of Silicon Valley, the original ground zero of hustle culture mythology. For years, the tech industry sold us on the romance of the all-nighter, the founder sleeping on a cot in the office, the CEO who answers emails at 3 a.m. This was worshipped as the price of genius. What they didn't broadcast quite as loudly was what happened to the people who bought into it fully, without the venture capital safety net, without the equity, without the exit strategy. Study after study coming out of places like Stanford and Harvard has shown something that the hustle influencers conveniently never mention. Cognitive performance starts degrading significantly after about 50 hours of work per week. After 55 hours, you're producing work of such diminished quality that you might as well not have done it at all. Think about that. You're working 60, 70 hours a week and producing the same output, or worse, than someone working a clean, focused 45. You're not getting ahead. You're spinning your wheels in sand and calling it a marathon. Your decision-making deteriorates. Your creativity tanks. Your emotional regulation collapses. And the truly cruel irony is that the more sleep-deprived and overworked you become, the less capable you are of recognizing just how impaired you've gotten. It's cognitive blindness. You can't see the whole because you're already inside it. The people who made it in Silicon Valley weren't the ones who worked the most hours. They were the ones who solved the right problem at the right time, often with the right connections, and quite often with the right amount of inherited capital to survive the lean years. The grind was real for them, but it wasn't the grind that made them successful. It was the bet, and most bets lose. That part always gets edited out of the story. Now let's move somewhere completely different. Let's go to Japan. Japan gave the world a word for what hustle culture looks like at its most extreme endpoint. The word is Karoshi. It translates directly to death by overwork. This isn't a metaphor. This isn't burnout. This is a legal category of mortality recognized by the Japanese government. A human being working themselves to death, collapsing at their desk or taking their own life because the psychological weight of relentless overwork became unbearable. Japan has had to create government task forces, pass legislation, and launch national awareness campaigns specifically to combat a culture that told workers their value was entirely tied to their productivity. Stop for a second. A government had to pass laws telling its citizens they were allowed to go home. That sentence deserves to sit with you for a moment. A society became so thoroughly colonized by the logic of productivity that legal intervention was required just to give people permission to stop working. And the response from hustle culture would probably be, well, that's their culture, that's an extreme case. Except it's not extreme. It's the logical destination of a belief system that has no internal limit. When your identity is your productivity, and your productivity can always be higher, there is no finish line. There is no enough. There is only more. And before you think this is purely a Japanese phenomenon, the United States loses an estimated 120,000 lives per year to workplace stress-related illness. That figure comes from research published in the Stanford Graduate School of Business. Workplace stress. Not dangerous jobs, not accidents, stress. The invisible killer that hustle culture has been quietly feeding for decades while selling you a dream on the other end. But here's the thing that really gets me. Even if we set aside the health consequences, even if we bracket all of that and say, fine, you're willing to take the physical toll, the financial math still doesn't work the way you've been promised. This is where the third example comes in, and it might be the most uncomfortable one yet, because it hits the people who are doing everything right by hustle culture's own standards. Meet the side hustle generation. These are the people who took the message seriously. They work their full-time job. They build their Etsy store or their drop shipping business or their freelance brand on the side. They invest every spare hour. They skip social events. They delay relationships. They put off having children. They push off buying homes. They tell themselves it's temporary, just until the income replaces their salary. Studies tracking this demographic over the last decade have found something remarkable and deeply sad. The majority of side hustlers, the majority, never reach income replacement. The average side hustle in America generates less than $400 a month. Not per week, per month. After taxes, after platform fees, after the cost of equipment and subscriptions and courses they bought to learn how to do the thing, many of them are operating at a net loss while working an additional 15 to 20 hours a week. They sacrificed years of their life for $400 a month. And because hustle culture told them that failure means you didn't work hard enough, they blamed themselves instead of examining the structural reality they were operating in. This is not a coincidence. This is a feature, not a bug. Hustle culture is extraordinarily profitable for the people selling it, Every motivational speaker, every course creator, every influencer posting their 4 a.m. morning routine is monetizing your anxiety about not doing enough. They need you to believe that you are one more hour of work away from the breakthrough. They need you to believe that the gap between you and success is effort, because if you understood that the gap is often structural, access to capital, network, timing, inheritance, geography, you might stop buying courses and start asking much harder questions about the systems you're operating inside. Consider this. The United States has approximately 700 billionaires. If every single one of them had worked 100 hours a week from the age of 20 until now, the collective hours of work would still not explain the wealth concentration we're looking at. What explains it is compound interest on inherited capital, access to credit at scale, network effects in deal making, and in many cases, being positioned at the right place during a specific window of technological or market transformation. Hard work was often part of it. Hard work was rarely the whole story. But be born into an existing network during a period of economic expansion is not a morning routine you can adopt. So instead we get him wake up at 4:47 a.m. and drink this specific protein blend. The productivity industry, apps, books, planners, courses, coaching programs, supplements marketed to high performers, is worth over $80 billion globally. $80 billion. Built almost entirely on the insecurity of people who have been told they're not working hard enough. It is, if you think about it clearly, one of the most elegant business models ever created. Manufacture the anxiety, then sell the cure. Repeat indefinitely. So what do you actually do with this information? This is the part where I'm not going to hand you a 5-step framework with a catchy acronym, because that would be doing exactly what I just spent 10 minutes criticizing. Instead, let me offer something simpler and considerably less sellable. The research on high performance, actual research, not anecdote, points consistently in one direction. The people who sustain excellent work over long periods of time are not the ones who work the most hours. They are the ones who protect their recovery as aggressively as they protect their output. They sleep. They have relationships outside of work. They have identities that are not entirely constructed around productivity. They take vacations without guilt. They have hobbies that produce nothing monetizable. They draw boundaries and they hold them, not because they're lazy, but because they understand that a depleted human being produces depleted work. The most dangerous thing hustle culture ever did wasn't convince people to work hard. Working hard is fine. Working hard towards something meaningful is genuinely satisfying. The most dangerous thing it did was convince people that rest is a reward you earn, rather than a biological necessity you're owed. The moment you believe rest must be earned, you've entered a game that is permanently rigged against you, because there's always more work to do. The inbox never reaches zero. The to-do list never ends. The revenue number can always be higher. If you're waiting until you've done enough to deserve rest, you will wait forever. And while you're waiting, life is not on pause. Your kids are growing up. Your parents are getting older. The friends you keep rescheduling are slowly, quietly, without drama, drifting out of your life and building their routines around your absence. The experiences you're deferring for later are quietly becoming impossible. Not because you'll run out of money, but because you'll run out of the specific version of yourself who wanted them, or run out of the people you wanted to share them with. Hustle culture doesn't just cost you time, it costs you the texture of your life, the accumulation of small moments and ordinary pleasures that, when you look back from the far end, turn out to have been everything. Your great-grandparents fought for that 8-hour workday. They went on strike for it. Some of them died for it. They understood something that hustle culture has spent 40 years trying to make you forget. Time is the one resource that cannot be recovered, manufactured, or monetized back into your life once it's gone. Every hour you trade for a future that may never arrive is an hour that definitively, certainly, absolutely will not come back. Not for any price. Not with any app. Not with any productivity system or biohacking supplement or manifestation practice. Gone is gone. Let me bring this back to something concrete before we close out, because I don't want to leave you with just philosophy. Here's the reframe that actually changes behavior. Stop asking how you can work more. Start asking what you're optimizing for and whether your current pace of work is actually moving you toward that thing. Write it down if you have to. Most people, when they sit down and do this exercise with genuine honesty, discover that the answer is no. They're not working toward freedom. They're working to avoid the feeling of not working because hustle culture has made rest feel like a moral failure. They're not building toward a specific life. They're running from a specific feeling. That's not ambition. That's anxiety with better branding and a really good Instagram filter. The most radical thing you can do in the current cultural moment is to define success on your own terms. Protect your time and energy with the same ferocity that influencers tell you to protect your morning routine, and understand that your worth as a human being is not a function of your output. You were not born to be a productivity machine. You were born to live a life, and a life requires more than a grind. To recap what we covered, hustle culture promises that extreme work equals success, but the cognitive science shows performance degrades sharply above 50 hours per week. Japan's concept of Karoshi and 120,000 annual American deaths tied to workplace stress reveal the physical cost of this ideology. And the side hustle generation's actual financial data shows that the majority never achieve what they sacrifice to reach. The common thread is a system that profits from your insecurity and repackages your exhaustion as virtue. That system has been running for a long time. The question is whether you keep feeding it. There's one more thing worth saying before we close, and it's probably the piece that's least comfortable to hear. A lot of people, when they encounter this argument, have an immediate defensive reaction. But I love what I do. I want to work this hard. My work is my purpose. And if that's genuinely true for you, not as a rationalization, not as a defense mechanism, but as a grounded, examined truth, then this video isn't entirely about you. Some people do find profound meaning in intensive work, and that's legitimate. But here's the test worth applying honestly. If your work were taken away from you tomorrow, the company failed, the market collapsed, the platform banned your account, who would you be? What would be left? If the answer to that question creates a sense of dread or emptiness, then you haven't found purpose. You found an identity crutch. And the hustle industry built that crutch for you deliberately, because a person whose entire self-worth is tied to their productivity is a person who will never stop buying tools to help them be more productive. Real purpose can survive interruption. Real meaning doesn't evaporate when you take a Saturday off. Real ambition doesn't require you to destroy your nervous system to prove it exists. The version of ambition that demands total sacrifice is not drive, it's compulsion. And compulsion, unlike genuine motivation, is never satisfied. It just escalates. There is a profound difference between choosing to work hard because it aligns with your values and working hard because you are terrified of what happens if you slow down. One of those is freedom. The other is a very well-decorated cage. If this hits something real for you, share it with someone who's currently in the grind and might need to hear it. Not to tell them they're wrong, but because sometimes the most generous thing you can do for someone you care about is hand them permission to breathe. And drop a comment below with this. What's one thing you've sacrificed to hustle culture that you genuinely wish you had back? Could be time, a relationship, your health, a hobby you loved, a version of yourself you used to be. Anything. Because I think when we start naming what this cost us out loud, in public, with honesty, we start making different choices. We start building a different kind of story about what a good life actually looks like. And making different choices together is the whole point.